Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Wave. I'm joined by Isaac Popper. Loving the Fear the Wave hat you were just pointing to there, Isaac. We're going to be talking about Tulane's big win and a very high-scoring game against North Texas. Great overall win for the Wave. I believe Isaac has his infamous ipop stats top players of the week list. So we're going to go through those and then we're going to hit you with some big stats from the win this last week. And it was a historic win. Tulane adds to their consecutive conference wins, which they are currently first in the country in consecutive conference wins, a record that dates back all the way to last season. So it was an absolutely historic win for the Tulane Green Wave, as every win will be from this point forward in conference until they lose. Don't think it's happening. Tulane's the best team in the country. We're going to win the national championship. But in all seriousness, we are in a great position to, get to the conference championship, win that, and after that, let the chips fall where they may. We're going to start this video off with ipop stats. Isaac, how do you want to do this? Actually, do you want to go 6 up to 1, or do you want to go 1 down to 6?
I like that idea. Let's do 6 down to 1. Since whenever people read my tweets, they go 1 to 6. It's great to be back with you, John.
Yeah, I'm excited. So let's hear number 6 then. I guess let's jump right into it.
Number 6, I have Keith Brown had 14 points, and not the 14 points that you would think. I don't mean 2 touchdowns. I mean he scored 14 points, not just 2 touchdowns, but also a 2-point conversion. So even though he actually had just 1 catch in this game, registered as 1 catch, he scored 14 points because he had an 11-yard rushing touchdown on the end around, which I was excited to see. We've seen that a lot in practice. And he also was wide open on a 2-point conversion.
Yeah, Keith Brown is one of those guys who maybe not going to get the most touches every single game, but he makes the most of the touches he gets. And that, just speaks to the efficiency and value to this team that he brings week in and week out.
I love seeing Keith as a starting receiver. And you can check out Sam Lockwood's extensive interview with Keith Brown wherever you get your Fear the Wave podcasts.
Yeah, highly recommend. Good stuff over there from Sam. Love having him on the team. All right, let's jump into number 5 right now. Who's number 5 on your list, Isaac?
That's my guy, Will Carroll. 2 weeks in a row, the first time I've ever had a special teamer on in back-to-back weeks. He's also only the second special teams player to ever be an ipop's top player in multiple weeks of a season. So very exciting for Will. 4 punts, 1 on the 10-yard line, punting from the 40, a punt that went over 50 yards from the 1-yard line, bailing us out, and then a punt that was over 60 yards.
Yeah, those punts from the 1-yard line, I mean, you see it in the NFL where they'll shank them or, only get it out to the 30 or something, because you got to get those things out fast so it doesn't get blocked when you're backed up against your own end zone. So, at this level, being able to send one as far as he did from your own 1-yard line is really impressive. And, it's not something you think about as much in the moment, but you really notice it when they mess up. And, great job by him there. What do we got for number 4?
I've got Chris Rogers, a guy we had on Inside the Wave show a couple of weeks ago, has now had another 2 good weeks, very under the radar. He actually played 40 snaps, which was quite a lot for Chris Rogers this week. PFF really liked him, especially in the pass rush. I thought that he was making some noise throughout the game as well. And 40 snaps is a lot more than any other game at Tulane. His season high before this was 21. He had exactly 21 snaps in 3 games, which is kind of funny. And then played 40 snaps, a lot in coverage with 17, and then a lot more than usual in pass rush. He only had at least max 5 snaps in pass rush this season, and then played 10 on Saturday. And those 10 snaps resulted in 4 pressures, which is just ridiculous, 3 of which were hurries. He also had 3 tackles. He was very, very efficient on the day. Tulane had 14 pressures, and he accounted for 4 of them.
Impressive day. We got to get him back on the show at this rate. He just keeps climbing, right?
Yeah.
So I believe you've given us 3. So now that leads us to your number 3 player. I know who number 2 is. I know who number 1 is. You haven't told me who number 3 is. So I'm excited to hear.
Yeah, I've actually got the Fear the Wave offensive player of the week this week, picked by the coaches. They were right about this one. I thought that it was going to be Chaudre Hurst based on the initial read of the game and the computer vision scores. But upon review of the game, it's Derek Graham. The coaches got this one right. I think that he was phenomenal and a huge reason why Tulane rushed for so many yards. Mekhi Hughes going for a career high 195, got that career high in the first half. And then Duda Barnes as well with 11 carries for 78 yards. I had a tough time leaving Duda off my list this week, as well as some other offensive linemen like Chaudre Hurst and Vinny Murphy.
Yeah, great game from the offensive line. I believe you told me that Tulane or Coach Sumrall specifically is 22-0 when he outrushes his opponent. So they can keep doing that.
That's correct.
I mean, that's as good as it gets.
Yeah, and Tulane has basically barely lost in the last couple of years when they're outrushing opponents too. Ironically, it was the Southern Miss game was one of the few that they did lose when they outrushed their opponent during the Cotton Bowl season.
Yeah, I remember after that game, I was not excited for what was to come, and little did I know it would be arguably the greatest season in modern Tulane football history.
Josh Remetich also another amazing week in the pass block, just wasn't as strong in the run block, but there's some plays where we go throw it behind the line of scrimmage or maybe at the line of scrimmage, and he comes out of nowhere to just push somebody that's about to make a tackle out of the play.
Yeah, he's nasty. It's exactly what you want from an offensive lineman. So now we're leading up to our number 2 player. This would have been my number 1 player, I think, but you had it at number 2, which is also totally understandable. I think 1 and 2 could have been kind of interchangeable. I won't spoil it. Let's hear the number 2 player, arguably the player of the game, but your number 2 player.
Yeah, I did consider him for player of the game, a co-offensive player of the week with Derek Graham this week. It's none other than Mekhi Hughes, of course. Benefited dramatically from the regrade on PFF this week, and we've just seen him be amazing. 5 out of the last 11 games that he's played, he's been on the conference honor roll as player of the week or honorable mention, and Tulane has had a player on those lists in all 11 of those games.
Yeah, sign of a healthy program. Tulane's put out some really good running backs in the last few years. Obviously, you got Tajay, you got Mekhi Hughes is definitely going to go to the NFL sooner rather than later.
Cam Carroll, Tavian Tolles, Darius Bradwell, who was part of the last Wumbo night game uniform reveal. Go check that out. The last time, the only other time before this week that Tulane wore the Wumbo helmet, which is an oversized green wave on a matte background helmet with the green helmet this time. They used white in the Cure Bowl and then with black uniforms. That was a night game in week 5 against Memphis in 2018, and running back Darius Bradwell had a career high that night, only to beat it in the Cure Bowl when we also wore the Wumbo helmets. His 2 best games in terms of touchdowns and total yards were wearing the Wumbo helmet. So hopefully Mekhi Hughes goes for over 200 yards this week.
Yeah, I'm surprised he wasn't pitching the helmets after that second big game. Like, hey, guys, the good things happen when we wear this helmet. I also think before we move on to number 1 player, I would be remiss if while talking about Tulane running backs, we didn't mention Matt Forte. But going on, I popped number 1 player of the week. Let's hear it.
Matthew Fobbs White, a player that wasn't, the best player in spring last year, and then had a better fall camp, maybe a great fall camp if you want to call it that, and has really, but did not start the season too strong. Has dramatically stepped it up in conference play, so much to the point that I've actually been saying, and maybe this is a really bad take, but I'm going to defend this take here. I actually think that Matthew Fobbs White so far, halfway through conference play, has been their best player. What do you think about that?
Hot
It is a hot take, but I'm going to defend it.
Well, here I have two things for you. First, don't say it's going to be a bad take before you say something. I want you to stick by it and ride or die with
Well,
it.
I think it's a great take. I just think that some fans will disagree.
Well, I'm trying to disagree with you, and I don't have a good enough argument to do so. So while that take might hit the ears a little harshly, I don't think it's an unfair take by any means.
He's had 3 outstanding games, has arguably been Tulane's best defensive player in 3 of the 4 games, with the 4th being a game that Tulane put up 71 points in. And it's not even like he had that bad of a game. Part of the reason I really like Fobbs White in conference play is that the box score metrics and stuff you can see with the eye align with the data from PFF. And an organization like the San Antonio Spurs, they talk about eyes, ears, and numbers. They have to align. And this is something that really aligns. Sometimes not all the numbers analytically always agree with a guy like Mekhi Hughes. And then we've seen some mistakes from Darian Mensah. He's been amazing, but sometimes not every game is as good as the previous game with Darian. And so that's very natural for a freshman quarterback. He's been, I would say, probably much better than Michael Pratt was, at least in terms of efficiency metrics and putting up passing yards based on how many attempts than Michael Pratt was in his freshman year. And Michael Pratt, I consider to be the Tulane GOAT, so that's no jab at number 7. QB1's just been really good as a redshirt freshman. Michael Pratt was also a true freshman, so keep that in mind. But Matthew Fobbs White not only has had 3 of the top defensive grades in the country in some of these weeks, but in terms of pass rush and also overall, but also is just getting to the quarterback. And that's why those grades are so high. He's had 4 3+ pressure games in a row. Tulane hasn't even let up 3 pressures in all of these games. If you flip it the other way, our offense has been so good that they let up like 1 or 2, maybe 3 pressures a game. And he is getting 3 or 4 on his own. And what's so amazing to me is that he's not even playing a lot until last week. He played 48 snaps last week. The week before against Rice at home, he played 33. That was a career high, 33 snaps as the defensive end. That was a career high, and he's still putting up these numbers. The first 2 weeks, he played 23 and 27 snaps. And what's more impressive is that against USF, he had 4 pressures and only 8 pass rush snaps. Like, how is that even possible? And
How do
then
you get 4 pressures and 8 pass rush snaps, and then you don't play a ninth?
because the game was already over, John. It was 45-10. We demolished USF by mid-second quarter. And not only were all 4 of those pressures in 8, not only did he have 4 pressures in 8 snaps, but all 4 were hurries too. So a lot of times, a good amount of pressures are hurries. I'm not sure an
Right.
exact, somewhere between 50 and 80%, but all 4 in that game were hurries, and a lot of these in other games, 2 yesterday and 2 versus UAB, or sorry, not yesterday, Saturday, were hurries.
Right.
And then against Rice, the one game where he only had 1 hurry was because he had 2 QB hits.
Yeah, he's I believe he's from Monroe, Louisiana. I know he's from Louisiana. Coach Summerall's talked about the importance, and so is our general manager Cole Hurd of keeping the talent in state. So he's a great example of that. I think before we sign off here, one thing that's important to mention is the AP poll, where Tulane is. I mean, it only goes 1 to 25. But you can see obviously the next few schools based on just the total vote numbers. And Tulane after this last week would be 28. So there's actually a decent chance that if Tulane takes care of business tomorrow, we will be in the AP poll for, I believe, the first time this season. Although that is something that's becoming more usual to Tulane fans, but it's a big deal. It's not something that used to happen all the time. Another thing that used to not happen all the time is becoming bowl eligible, which Tulane was able to do with their win. It's really easy when you come into a season with high expectations like we had to take something like that for granted. and we definitely shouldn't, because I remember the years where the bowl game was the goal, and to be here after 8 games and already bowl eligible, definitely not something you want to take for granted.
You're definitely right, John. Thanks for the perspective. This is only if Tulane enters the polls next week, which I expect and hope. Tulane will have to take care of business, and if they do, they will be ranked. I would be very disappointed if not. It would be the 18th season out of 120 that Tulane has been ranked in an AP poll. So less than a 1 in 6 chance that a season that you randomly picked from Tulane's history was a season in which they had just 1 week with a ranking. And a lot of seasons there were only 1 week that Tulane has been ranked. And this would be just the fourth in 45 years, behind the last 2 years in 1998.
Yeah, it's definitely a golden era for Tulane football right now. We're very lucky that we get to be experiencing this. Tomorrow, Tulane takes on Charlotte on Halloween. The best part of Halloween every year is Tulane football when they play. That's what the holiday is all about. It's about Tulane beating Charlotte. So I'm sure Tulane fans will celebrate the win accordingly afterwards if we can take care of business. It's a great time to be a Tulane fan. Thanks for joining me, Isaac.
I would look forward to that. And I know Halloween and Thanksgiving night both have games, but as John Summerall said, at least you get Christmas and New Year's to the family. So, or at least one of the two. We'll see when a potential college football playoff or other bowl game would be. Bowl eligible, very exciting. The players are excited about that. A lot of work to do, John. It was a good performance in Denton. I enjoyed being there and seeing the Wave play really well through 3 quarters until they just kind of let North Texas burn out that clock until the end of the game. Thank you, Bryce Bohannon, for picking up that onside kick.
Roll Wave.
Roll Wave.